Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to the Imagine Women's Film Festival. My name is Sulia Giselle. I'm a filmmaker based in New York. I am so honored to be here. I was a part of the film festival last year, and it was my first film festival I've ever participated in that wasn't affiliated with my school. And I submitted my senior thesis film and I won the Best Director category. So I was very, very honored. So I'm just so excited to be here and to speak with all of you about your films, which are so incredible. I have so many questions. But before we get into that, how about we go around and introduce yourself, where you're based, and introduce your film. So who would like to go first? Rebecca?
I'm unmuted, so I can go.
All right.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Ozer. I am currently based in London, but I'm originally from New York, and I am the writer-director and one of the producers for Collector's Item.
I'll go next. Hi, my name is Cynthia Bastidas. I'm based in New York City, and I am the writer, director, and co-producer of Misguidance.
And my name is Arlene Chico Lugo. I'm also based in New York City and co-producer on Misguidance.
Excellent. So I noticed that in this particular block that a common theme with the group of films are sort of women reclaiming their agency, and whether that means, reclaiming their power, their identity for the better good to help someone else or to help themselves, which is very interesting, especially in the case of Misguidance. I was not expecting that. I had to watch it 3 times to oh man. So let's get into that story. Let's just jump right into Misguidance. Please tell me about the story, the inspiration, the characters, please.
Yeah, so I in the past did volunteer work with Catholic Charities and with other organizations. I translated for immigration, people who had immigration issues and people who were seeking asylum. And I started during the summer of 2018 when when families were being separated at the border. So I was able to hear some of their personal stories, and they were all very similar. So kind of the character of Sandra is an amalgamation of kind of like repeat stories that I've heard from people in Central America, the domestic violence being completely ignored and kind of being the norm, and also the gang violence and corruption that people living in those countries are facing right now. But then there was one particular story where the woman was a potential candidate for seeking asylum, but we just needed to find somebody that we could kind of release her to so they could help her out. And then it turned out that she had a friend that she had met over social media. And of course, the lawyers' ears perked up, my ears perked up, and we were like, so who is this person? We attempted to find her, and we couldn't. And then we talked to a previous lawyer, because when you go to the detention centers, it's just pro bono lawyers. So every week it's a different lawyer, or every month. So you're kind of looking at the history through the file, and maybe you make a phone call to the previous lawyer. Anyway, he had mentioned that he also had a similar situation with her case, and that the lawyers then said, oh, she's probably somebody who had been potentially could have been trafficked if she were not detained at the border. And I had never even heard of that. I was like, what? And so I asked the lawyer, and she said, yeah, it's very common. Like, as immigration policies get stricter along the border, human traffickers take advantage of that. And I don't know in this case if it was true or not, but I just kind of was like, this is a story that needs to be told, that we need to know about. And so I started looking into human trafficking, and a lot of it is actually labor trafficking and debt bondage. That's another thing that I was kind of surprised by. So yeah, it was just a story that I just felt very compelled to tell, because it's something that I had never heard of, and I'd like to think that I'm pretty aware. I try to be, at least. So that's where the inspiration for this came from.
And we had actually, we were hesitant to sort of portray this character who does violence onto another, another Latina, another woman, another person who, you would hope that she would be in solidarity with. But the reality is that these stories do happen. And so despite that hesitation, we really felt like this was, we have to tell these stories so that we realize, like, our own responsibility and within our own communities, and as hard as that was to portray, it is real.
Yeah, I was at the ending, I was like, wait, what? Like, what? Wait, whoa, what just happened? Like, I have to go back and, like, did I miss something? But wow, it's really, I think that story, because like the time lapse where they're like going over time and they're building this relationship, you're like, oh man, this is going to be a happy ending, like, this is great, like they're going to meet and be like friends and family, and it just a complete 180, and it just, wow. That movie, congratulations, that was great. And Rebecca, going to your film, again, I was not expecting that. I'm thinking, okay, like, I kind of think I know where this is going, but man, oh man, I loved it. There were first of all, the cinematography, the framing on the bed, the lighting, excellent. I was just like, yeah, I had to just keep watching your movie as well. And I actually wasn't familiar with the Greek goddess, the book that she was reading. So I did have to do some research with your film as well. But please tell me your inspiration. Just tell me everything. What was it like shooting this? And yeah, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Well, to what you were just saying, I feel very lucky. I had an amazing team. The cinematographer, Cece Chan, is fantastic. So I just want to shout that out, and everyone involved, but to the specific points you were bringing up. And yeah, in terms of the inspiration, funnily enough, the seed of the idea actually was the climax of it. So how she kills him was what sprung the whole film for me. And it came from a place of me thinking about, it's funny when I say it out of context, but I had said to a friend, like, I love knowing that I could probably kill someone with my thighs at any moment, which also is not really true probably, but I think it came from a place of like, when I think if you feel, disempowered from experiences similar to the film, or also just from, the world that we're living in and seeing women dying all the time, it's obviously the comment I said was like funny in that moment, but then it's like, I guess it came from a place of, wanting to feel more physically in control and powerful than I might really be. But yeah, so it came from that little random comment. And then I just kind of had this like brain vomit onto a notebook. And then I was developing the film for a while. That was like last September. So basically, or maybe end of August, but just about a year ago when I first had the idea. And then, we shot it in the spring. And we were actually originally going to shoot it in like December, but I'm so glad that didn't happen because it would have been very underdeveloped. But yeah, in terms of the film itself, it was a great experience, especially shooting on film. It was a really interesting challenge. But I think it was really great for, as you mentioned with Medea, and there's these different like theatrical elements to it as well. And I think, shooting on film, it forced us to have to rehearse more, similarly to how we would with theater, which was also nice because all three of the actors have a lot of theater experience. So I think it was nice for them to kind of have this hybrid moment. But yeah, with Medea, it's, the story of the fact that she's basically driven to madness and kills her children. And it's the fact that kind of the parallel with Z, or just certain, survivors in general, where it's like losing yourself. And oftentimes in ways that can be very toxic or damaging. And obviously like in some ways it feels really empowering to be like, and she killed him, like, yes. But also it's like, is that the healthiest thing for Z? Like, no, like, I'm sure it's not. But that's what, this film wasn't me trying to say like, this is what we should all do. It's just kind of a way of starting a discussion around like, what are we supposed to do when there's nothing in the system that tends to actually support people in that way. But yeah, that's a rambling of thoughts for you.
Wow. So was it 16 millimeter, 35?
Yeah, I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought maybe it was shot on film, but I was like, oh, maybe, I'm not sure, because I feel like everyone, even with digital, you can always kind of like, make it look a certain way, but that just makes me love the film even more, that it was shot. Like, that's such a excellent, like, challenge, when I feel like now it's so easy to just shoot digital. But
Right.
was there a reason you felt it should be cut on film, or?
I think it was a mix of like story justifications, but also practicalities in terms of like, it was a very low budget film. Obviously, film itself is expensive, but the film overall, the project overall, was low budget. And, like, there were different people that I think were more interested because we were shooting on film. And knowing that, like, Cece, who is the DP, was involved very early on. It was the two of us really collaborating at the start, throughout. And she had first mentioned about being interested in shooting on film. And at that point, then I was thinking about it from a story perspective, and it was very much, this is a piece that has classical tones with the music, with the theatrical references, with Z's interests in general. And I think there's almost a noir-esque element, especially with the score in the first scene, I think. So I think story-wise, it made sense for all those sorts of reasons, and having that softness, almost as if you're very much a spectator. But then also in terms of, having it be like from a logistical point of view, having it be a new challenge for different filmmakers involved with the piece was exciting to people, I think. So kind of both.
It's interesting that you mentioned score, because I did have a question for the Misguidance team for the score. And I think what really threw me the curveball was because of the music, because it sounds happy. Like, I think about like, a really wholesome movie where you're like cradled at the end and it's very chipper. Was that intentional, the score, to throw the audience?
I thought, so basically this movie, I thought it would be a challenge, because it's, how do you show two people communicating on their computers, right? It's like, it's kind of boring, just be on your computer. So it was like, what are the different devices that I could use? So I thought music. And when I was working with the composers, I asked if there was some way that we could keep it like happy, neutral, because that's their experience, or at least that's the experience that Sandra is having, right? She's making a friend, and, she's finding a support system. And then, when we have that negative turn, it's the same music, it's just done in a minor key. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we talked about that. It was just like, how do we yeah, how do we make this more interesting when it's technically just two people, on the computer? And it's part of that grooming process, right? It's part of that grooming process. Like, when I don't remember at what point this was of the development process, but when we were developing, it was like when that documentary, the filmmaker Dream, her documentary about R. Kelly and how he had all these young women, and they were all basically groomed, and there's this whole grooming process. And at the same time, I was watching the documentary with, about Michael Jackson and the three, alleged survivors. I don't know exactly what happened. We don't know, but, this whole grooming process was like very like present in my mind. So, yeah, so I kind of wanted the music to reflect that positive, all of that stuff. I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yeah. No, I thought it was a very useful use of music, or because I know that in many films, score almost becomes like another character, or sometimes music can like represent a character if they're not there, or if they are on screen. So I just wanted to know if that was intentional, because that, for me, like, that's what really like threw me off, and I had to like watch it a few more times. And it's interesting that you say that, like, the keys change, and then just watching, I can't remember the other woman's name, but yeah, just watching her body language, like she's in this nicer apartment, she's drinking wine every night, like, and I'm like, oh wait, yeah, something's off here. And then the phone conversation, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, so yeah, no, I think you did a very, very good job using the score to carry the story and to pull in the audience and even trick the audience.
Oh, thank you. I just want to shout out quickly Marcelino Feliciano and Nikki Adams. They are an amazing duo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were really able to capture that feeling and that twist at the end.
And that brings me to my next question. I wanted to talk about casting for both of you. We can start with Rebecca, because I know that you mentioned that the actors in your piece have a theater background, and they felt kind of, like excited to, like, it reminds them of, like, the importance of rehearsal, where I'm not sure if they had to do that so much in the digital era of film. But what was the casting process like, especially for the male character? And what was like the dynamic on set? And yeah, let's hear more about that.
Yeah, so two of the three actors I actually previously knew. I had been in a showcase with them before, so even, I mean, it's not that I like wrote the script for them or anything. I didn't really have anyone specifically in mind at that point. But then as I was imagining it more after it had been written, I wanted to reach out to both of them. But they both still auditioned. Like, I had posted it on, Actors Access and Backstage and stuff. And they were both just amazing. And I had worked with them in the past, and they're both amazing people. So I was very, very lucky for that to work out the way it did. And specifically with the actor Nick, who plays Tyler, it's really funny because he's such an amazing, kind person in real life. And everyone that didn't know him before was like a little bit nervous going in, because like his tape was so good that like the crew that had seen it before meeting him was like, oh my God, like, is he like just an absolutely horrible person? Like, he's so creepy, I don't know. And then he's like, hi, like, what's up, how are you? And you're like, oh, that's not you at all, it's fine. Especially with like the sequence, the memory sequence, where it's just like really quick flashes of women he's abused. We filmed that we did 3 overnights, and we filmed that on the very first night. And it was it took like 4 hours to film, probably, even though it's literally like 6 seconds. But, he hadn't met a bunch of the women, and they were, like in, not that much clothing at many points. But he everyone was talking about the fact that it was never awkward or uncomfortable, because between takes and things, they both just feel really, you know, like joking about things and just completely normal. Whereas if it had been an actor that was not as good of a person as Nick, it could have been an issue. But yeah, so that was very lucky. And then Imani, who plays Z, I found through Actors Access, and it was amazing because like I had a lot of different tapes come in, and you know there was lots of great actresses, but I actually saw her tape. I think it was like the last tape I saw maybe, and literally from like the first second, I was like, oh, that's Z. Like I was like, okay, we know. So that was also extremely lucky. But yeah, I mean, in terms of their backgrounds, it's interesting because they all had done a mix of acting for screen as well, but I imagine that their theater backgrounds gave them, you know, like I really appreciate the fact that they were up for doing 3 overnights, and especially for Nick and Imani doing weird situations, and like Nick was tied up for a while and he like had to keep chewing gum to like have spit when he died and stuff. So there was like weird things they had to do. And they were completely like gung-ho and it was all good. So like I think probably things they've dealt with for theater pieces in the past probably, you know, helped prepare for that, I imagine. But yeah, they were all wonderful, so I'm very lucky.
That's amazing. And the Misguidance team, what was your casting experience like? Did you know any of them personally? Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, I mean, we similarly feel really lucky and so grateful for the amazing cast and just amazing team in general. Everyone was really great. Yeah, the cast was a pretty, you know, a pretty even mix of folks that we knew that Cynthia had already had in mind for certain roles. A couple of people that we found through Actors Access and Breakdown Service, backstage, I mean, and recommendations. And so one of the roles, the woman who played Rosario, Cynthia had written this role for her. So we already knew that that role was set. The process for finding Sandra, the other character, was through a recommendation. Do I have that right? Yeah, she someone had recommended her to us, and as soon as we saw her tape, we were completely blown away, and we knew. We just knew immediately. It was beautiful. She did such a great job. We found Sandra's son, Carlitos, through I believe it was backstage. Yeah, and then the 2 gang members, the Mara members. One was through a recommendation, and the other one Cynthia knew just through being in the business. And let's see, am I missing anyone? I just pulled up the casting notice.
And Martin also, who played the husband, we found him through, I'm not sure Actors Access or backstage, but he is actually, we were really lucky to get him because he is like a very prolific Broadway actor.
Wow.
And just the nicest, most humble person, you put out a notice and you get these responses, and it becomes an incredibly humbling process in and of itself, just the amount of talent that's out there. And Martin is just the most lovely person. And again, he was, similarly, he was playing, maybe not the most sympathetic character. So it was interesting, to see this person who, could do this thing on screen and then is just really the most supportive and lovely person, and incredibly talented.
Wow, that is so amazing. And then I guess this question relates to the cast, but also just your viewers in general. Both of your stories deal with women as survivors in a sense, survivors of domestic abuse, survivors of like external world violence. And then, for the case of Sandra, she's going to be introduced to a whole new animal of potential violence. And And Z, of course, she's, avenging the violence, I'm assuming is her partner. Or, that your story actually, Rebecca, reminds me of just sex workers in general. I have a few friends that are sex workers, and it's not always safe. And I'm sure they may have come into situations where they have, hopefully not abuse like this story, or worse, but it can happen. So what would be the message for women who see your films and either know someone or have experienced this? Like, what would you really want for them to take away? And I guess we can start with Rebecca.
That's a great question. I think
We can take a minute, because I know this is a loaded question. Anyone can chime in if you have, if you want to think about it for a minute or so, please.
Well, I could say for misguidance, one of the things that I really wanted people to take away was just how immigration policy really does affect other things. It's not just like, oh, can people, are people going to be allowed to come to United States? Like there are some real serious consequences. And even like for the people who, when that policy, like remain in Mexico, that dumb policy, that just, they're living, the Haitians right now that are seeking asylum, they're like living in these camps, like, and they're just, they're desperate, they're hungry, they're scared, they're all the things. And so that just leaves them open to anybody to come in and do whatever they want to any of them. And yeah, I just really want us to, it's not just like, oh, are they documented or undocumented? It's not, it's more than that. And also, this whole thing about labor trafficking, like, it's easy to distance ourselves from the sex trafficking, because if you're not necessarily participating in that industry, I don't even know what to call it, but in that like activity, then you're like, oh, that's happening over there and I'm not involved, so I'm a good person. But with labor trafficking, we're all complicit in this, especially in the agricultural industry, myself included. So I don't know what I can do. Like I could write a film about it, and that's what I'm trying to do, to create awareness. But am I putting people into safety by doing this? No. But I don't know. I just feel like I just would like for people to think about it, and maybe collective, like our collective brains can start to create some change around that area.
Yeah, and it also just gives people in those situations a voice and a platform or visibility, which I think is important. It's like a step in the right direction. Rebecca?
I think there's definitely a mix of things. I think that's why I was thinking about it so much.
Yeah.
But I think if I had to say like one main one, I suppose, advocating for yourself and others, specifically people that are in need of it and don't really have the strength or aren't in a mental place to be advocating for themselves. And obviously that doesn't mean through killing people, but whatever context that applies to. And I think, fighting your battles when they need to be fought. And yeah, I think, finding your form of justice and healing and figuring out what that looks like for you.
And I did have a follow-up question. The final shot of the film where it drifts off from the characters, and it like holds on to the glasses with the lipstick. I absolutely love that shot. It's stunning. What is the symbolism or?
So, thank you. So Z has been killing lots of men. So each of the glasses are from a different man's house.
Collector's item.
Yeah, so that's like her collection.
Ah.
And then his collection is, you know, the Polaroids and the women's accessories. But yeah, so like ultimately, to kind of what you were talking about earlier with sex work, Z isn't actually a sex worker. She was just kind of like an average woman who ended up intentionally going into killing men just based on, you know, the trauma she had experienced and how she wanted to respond to that. But to your point of, you know, how awfully sex workers are treated, the way that Tyler treats her, of course, is because he thinks that she's a sex worker, and she's aware of that. And also in my head, when I was planning, you know, just his background, not that the audience would see that, but I think that he's also done this to women that he doesn't think are sex workers, but he has a very different approach then. Like he wouldn't be so awful to them. Because of course, sex workers are just completely stigmatized on the whole and treated very poorly. But yeah, so the final shot is the fact that she's been doing this, and now her and Naomi are going to do it together, is what the "to many more" is like alluding to. Yeah.
Wow, it's so powerful. I'm going to rewatch it after this so I can look for her little Scotch glass now. Because I saw like a bunch of the tall wine stem glasses. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a very great shot, but what does it mean? But now I'm going to look for that item. Wow. And then for the ladies of Misguidance, I have an affinity for set design, which is why I'm just like drawn to certain shots. Sandra's house, did you build it? Was that on a sound stage? Like, let's talk about that.
We were lucky enough to get a location where on one property we had both houses. So the main house had it was actually a pool shed that we sort of converted into a shack. And that was again another wonderful crew member, Augusta. Oh, I'm blanking on
Augusta Lavav from Brooklyn, graduated from Brooklyn College.
Yes.
Yeah, they and I looked up. We watched a bunch of Honduran films, and then we were like, you know, because it's like we had to create Honduras, right? So yeah, we just watched a bunch of stuff, and we were like, oh, okay, this looks like it's right, like socioeconomically, and you know, all that stuff. And so we just were like, let's, you know, they went to all these thrift stores, and it was just, yeah, Augusta just really pulled it off. It was great. I can't believe it.
Wow, that's amazing. I went to Brooklyn College too, so I'm gonna see if I can find this person.
Yeah, there was actually a very heavy contingent of Brooklyn College folks on our set.
Oh my gosh, shout out to BC.
Absolutely. Yeah. Our AD, Brooklyn College, our DP was Brooklyn College. Yeah.
Editor.
Wow.
You know,
all right.
This was my first film, and so I didn't know really where to start. So I went to Brooklyn College. I got my MFA in acting.
Oh my God.
So I just was like, let me look at their film festival that they do. They have it online, and I just was like, who are the DPs that I like? And then I found Paulina, and it was just like, it was great. She taught me so much.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was good. A lot of talent there.
Yeah. So we are coming towards the end of this talk back. I'm so sad because I just have like so many questions. But closing remarks, you know, where do you see this film going? Like, are you writing anything else? Like, what's next for you in your careers? I know, Rebecca, you're in London now. So if you wanted to start and.
Yeah, so I'm in London. I am doing a MA in screenwriting for the year. So during that, I'm going to be developing a few different shorts and a feature. And I aim to direct one of the shorts, or potentially one that's not written for the course, but just a short, probably around this April, hopefully. And yeah, in terms of collector's item, I never intended for it to be something that would be expanded. Like I always just thought it would be a short. But I think Z as a character might come with me for future things. I have a feature idea that I could see, you know, like some version of her. Maybe she wouldn't be called Z, and maybe it's not like it's not the same circumstances or anything, but definitely just inspired by some of the themes and her as a character. Yeah, so I'll mainly be writing this year and then directing some bits here and there. And then hopefully moving into feature land as well.
Excellent. And ladies, Miss Guidance?
So for Miss Guidance, previous to like the film festivals, and well, when we were in development, we were like, this will be like, we need to partner with nonprofits and with education institutions. So once it, you know, has its film festival life, we really hope, we actually have a program, it's on our website, it's called Don't Be Misled, where we are going to partner, or going to try to partner with nonprofits and you know, education institutions, so that they can use the film to, you know, as part of their curriculums, or, you know, yeah, just, it's, I guess it's an awareness building campaign, or impact campaign, I guess is what they're calling them now. So we're going to try to do that after the film festival life. And then just personally, I'm really kind of doubling down on the filmmaking. I really love it. I've been an actor for most of my life, and I just really am feeling empowered by the process of filmmaking. And I've been working, I have a feature documentary in development, and I'm working on a couple of short documentaries as well.
Yeah, it's a similar trajectory actually to Cynthia. You know, we're good friends and longtime collaborators, and so we're both sort of moving into this film world together. And so actually, you know, we just found out that another film that my producing partner, my husband, actually, and I did, working with the same composers as Ms. Guidance, just made it into another festival. So
Congratulations.
Thank you. So yeah, just moving in this trajectory. I'm sure that Cynthia and I will be collaborating in the future again. So yeah.
Well, that is absolutely exciting, everyone. Thank you for being a part of this talkback, and thank you for, you know, pursuing film. We need women in film. We need these stories. We just need more voices to be heard. And I really adore all of you, and I wish you all the best in your success as filmmakers. And I can't wait to see your features in the future and see you on the red carpet and be like, hey, I know her. But yeah, it was such a lovely time spending with you all. And I just thank you. And yeah, thank you.